Welcome to Week 8 Receiver Edition. Of course, RotoCurve videos. Ricky Sanders, Jim McCormick here with you. But before we get started, Jim giving you the peace sign. I don't know if his image shows up on your screen. But before we get started, I want to tell you about this deal we got going on. Give me 1 second. As per usual, because I am technologically illiterate. Here we go. rotocurve.com/free-trial. rotocurve.com/free trial. All the great things you get included with the package that I've been telling you about all season. Exclusive rankings, projections, cheat sheets, tools, DVP rankings, points per attempt, red zone utilization, optimized lineups, access to player ownership percentage after the Thursday night game. I could go on and on and on, but we only have approximately 15 minutes in this video, so you're going to have to check it out for yourself. rotocurve.com/free trial. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Being here with Jim is also a wonderful, wonderful thing because he's going to tell me which receivers to use this week. Because I have to admit, at this point in the week, it is a little confusing. I've got a lot of guys circled, but differentiating is a little bit of an issue this week.
It is, especially because a lot of these guys I like are all within like $100, $200 of each other. I think what helps is that I found some consensus with my running backs. I'm going to go chalky with it. I'm covered in chalk. If I'm paying up, it's like Spencer Ware or even moderately paying up, it's Forte. But then, like I said, most lineups are going to have Quiz and Booker in them. So that allows me some freedom here, I guess, to go after. And I even like Doyle at tight end. So it allows some freedom to spend up. T.Y. Hilton's a guy that I'm just still on. You talked in the quarterback show about how Luck's in a great situation. I think that directly correlates to Hilton being in a great situation. The Chiefs secondary, they have some good names, Marcus Peters and Eric Berry back there, but they give up a ton of yards. They give up more than 200 yards a game to receivers. They give up fantasy point wise. They're also quite generous, which obviously correlates to all the yards they give up. They've given up the third most fantasy points in most formats. So, it's just a good setup. He's got 28% market share. Even if Moncrief gets back here, I don't think that takes too big of a ding. I think what you see is some consolidation on the top. I still think this is a 25% market share for Hilton. Good setup. He's arguably the best vertical guy right now going in the game with Watkins hurt. So he's got all those elements you want for tournaments in terms of upside, but he has all the security points you want in cash. So if you have a 25% share of a protected Andrew Luck, I like that prospect. I just do. I also like Brandon Marshall. I think he's kind of chalky himself, obviously. He's number one on if you want to check out the cheat sheet index, which is helpful for identifying the best matchups. RotoCurve updates them obviously every week, but they're curated pretty well in terms of showing you all the different reasons, right, between targets per game and just like the wide receiver rating based on their matchups. Marshall vets out first. He's facing a depleted, easy, exploitable Cleveland secondary. It's just a good setup. He's got 29% of the market share. He's also tied with Emmanuel Sanders since, on the season in red zone targets, throughout the league. So there's a lot to like between these two guys. They're very similarly priced. They're only $100 different on DraftKings, $400 different on FanDuel. So I actually think it's possible to get both of those guys in your lineup and then try to find out a third receiver. I know we're going to be tempted to go with the Julio Jones situation. I think in cash it's tough to get away from Julio, especially if you're paying down for Booker and Quiz. Do you think it's too much to pay up for him? Because, this seems like an Antonio Brown kind of feeling last year. I mean, just one of these situations where Jones is so well set up, like it's hard to imagine him not eating against the secondary.
Yeah, so that's really my main issue. You pretty much put it in a nutshell this week. It's like Julio Jones against a banged-up secondary is I can just see you sitting there mid-week, mid-game saying, how the hell did I not use this guy? Right. The situation was so perfect. And I'm looking at these other guys. Marshall's definitely on my list. His price on DraftKings specifically is a little high for my liking. Right. But I don't think he'll be that chalky there for that reason. But I do think, again, this is a high-volume situation where you look at A.J. Green last week. They just kept chucking it to him, and I think Marshall's in a similar situation. You look at T.Y. Hilton. Of course, if I'm on Andrew Luck, I'm definitely on T.Y. Hilton. I think if you're going the Luck route in cash, you might as well go all in, right? And use both of them. then there's Mike Evans. I think that's your choice, is Julio Jones or Mike Evans. And if you're going to go Mike Evans, you have the chance to spend probably for a third receiver. With Julio Jones, you probably don't, especially on DraftKings. But there is some downside to Mike Evans' matchup, which makes me kind of like Julio Jones for cash. Emerson, exactly. The fact that not only is Emerson the fourth graded cornerback in terms of Pro Football Focus's grading, but he's a big cornerback, and that kind of worries me. I mean, you look at Allen Robinson last week, and I think that Emerson's the kind of guy that's going to get beat by, those speedy receivers more so than these tall guys, because he's, right there up with them in height. And, it is a little encouraging to look at his numbers where he's matched up 96% of the time on the left side, only 4% in the slot. So he's not really shadowing guys, which is good for Mike Evans, prospects. But I would guess if they get anywhere near the red zone, they would scheme that in if they were anywhere, if they had half a brain. But that being said, these numbers kind of speak for themselves. They haven't really. So Evans, if he lines up on the right side of the formation, may not have Emerson. But, his presence is enough for me, because Evans kind of moves around the formation to at least dissuade me a little for cash games. I think a lot are going to be on him. I think Evans may even be the highest owned receiver of the week. I just, for some reason that Allen Robinson flop last week really scares me against this defense that's been playing a lot better. So I want to make the case for and against Mike Evans. Of course, this defense on paper has been burned, but I do think there is some downside. I think if we like Russell Wilson, another guy is Doug Baldwin for cash games. He's kind of been spreading it out a little this year, but I think Baldwin's still the guy. He's obviously not going to score as many touchdowns as he did last year, but I think against the Saints secondary, this sets up as a pretty good situation for Baldwin to get it done again. I think we're in the same spot where I think I want three good receivers. If you spend up for Julio Jones, it makes it difficult. But ideally, I do want the likes of, I like Marshall, I like Hilton, I like Jones. I like Evans if you don't have the salary. So it is a really difficult week for cash. Let's put it that way. If we're spending down, are there any guys you like as kind of a little bit cheaper options this week?
Well, Ty Montgomery still, I know it's kind of a niche kind of thing, but especially on DraftKings where he's 5,300. I almost think eventually you're going to see this backfield kind of become a little bit more traditionalized, if they see Jackson or one of these guys become an actual running back. But
they said Niall Davis is going to have a role this week, is what they said.
And so it might happen, but at the same time, it's been effective, and they're passing to run right now. That's just what they're doing. And Rodgers has dropped back 47 times per game over the last 3 weeks. It's the most passes he's had in a 3-game stretch in his career. You've already talked about why would we target Julio in the quarterback situation. Why would we target Ryan? Which is to say, this has shootout implications, which means they're going to have to pass. Which I think that actually plays well for, this guy working those routes out of the backfield. The Packers don't protect Rodgers well. He's got one of the highest pressure rates in the league. So I don't know. It could be a situation where Montgomery. I think at some point we're all thinking that this experiment will end. It's kind of a short-term thing, but for now the price is still right for me to pay down. I'm willing to take it because paying $5,300 for him allows me to afford two of those big guys that we just talked about.
Yeah, I think that's the move for cash. I agree with you. 10-plus catches in 2 consecutive weeks. I do that podcast with London Fletcher every week, and he kind of made a great point that with Montgomery in the background, defenses are having issues scheming, whether they should scheme like it's a 5 wide receiver set or they should scheme like it's a running back because, he's still averaging, he averaged 6.7 yards per carry last week. So teams are having a difficult time with that, and that's why, he's getting so open.
Yeah,
exactly. So I think that he's got a good point there that Montgomery is a kind of a PPR machine and should be moving forward if they use him in that role because he's a difficult one. He's a 5th receiver in the backfield. So let's move on to tournaments, though. We've got a bunch of the top guys in cash. So who are we using in tournaments?
Well, I've been burnt too many times by Allen Robinson to get into it, but the matchup's still there, right? He's been terrible. I think season-long wise, I'm actually selling on him if he has a good game. I just don't think you're going to see a revival to what we saw last year. So if he does have a good game here against the Titans, I mean, the Titans are entirely beatable on the outside corners here, McCourty, and just how they rank on Pro Football Focus. I think they're 25th in pass coverage, something like that. So, it's a nice setup, and you would think that the work would be there. But, again, it's a Thursday game, so how do we get to enjoy that, Cooper is a guy – Amari Cooper is a guy that I like in cash in an extent, but it's too much. He's too much compared to his peers. Like, I'd rather have Hilton. I'd rather have Marshall in cash. But I think in tournaments, Mike Clay does a thing, kind of an opportunity-adjusted touchdown rate thing. So it's basically how many touchdowns should you have based on your opportunities, kind of a league-wide conversion rate applied to what you're doing, And right now, Cooper's kind of missing the most touchdowns in the league. And as much as we talk about Crabtree being targeted in the red zone, Cooper's had 6 end zone targets and 0 catches. Crabtree's had 6 end zone targets and 6 touchdowns. So, there's a correction, I think, coming here at some point. And I do think there will be a multi-touchdown kind of slate-shifting, game coming. He's on pace for 90 and 1,500. It can't be possible that he doesn't score touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think where I'm starting in tournaments is Larry Fitzgerald. We kind of mentioned Carson Palmer in the open. And you look at the individual matchup, most of the time in the slot against Robert McClain, according to Pro Football Focus, is the 5th most advantageous matchup of the week. Fitzgerald, when he's paired with Carson Palmer, is just automatic. There are so many injuries to this wide receiving core right now. Is John Brown going to play? Didn't J.J. Nelson get hurt? Jerron Brown hurt. I mean, there's just becoming limited options in the passing game where they're kind of having to become kind of a concentrated offense like the Steelers, where it's Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson and not much else is kind of their only option here. So I really like the way that sets up for Larry Fitzgerald against a defense that, again, has been burned by quarterbacks this year. Other guys I like, if we're not on Julio Jones in tournaments, you might as well give a shot to Mohamed Sanu. He's another guy with a solid matchup this week. He's only 4,100 on DraftKings, and if we think this game's going to be a shootout, then Sanu is probably going to get involved as well. We know the defensive focus will be on Julio. There is a possibility they overcorrect to try and double him, and if they do, I mean, then the underneath will be open for Devontae Freeman, and there'll be other things open for Mohamed Sanu as well. And for some reason, I can't stop going to this well as the Adam Humphries well.
Yeah, I've been there.
I'm trying to be different this week, and I'm seeing the downside to the matchup for Mike Evans, but I don't think there's a scenario where they're going to use their best corner to try and cover Adam Humphries. So if Evans is seeing some additional pressure, if the running game is slowing down, if there's a third down, he's kind of his security blanket over Brate, who's kind of just the end zone target at this point. His targets have been trending downward. So I think Humphries is a guy who's really cheap, who's kind of got that, Cole Beasley from a few weeks ago, 56 yards, 2 touchdown type upside. But one guy that I think I do really like in tournaments this week is Dez Bryant, that I think a lot of guys are going to forget about, is, these Eagles corners, the one specifically, Nolan Carroll is tall, but, I mean, Dez Bryant's an elite receiver. Their corners have not been great, especially Nolan Carroll. And I think this defense gets –
they don't have a quarterback ranked in the top 100 on Pro Football.
Yeah. Exactly. So with this offensive line giving him time to throw, Dak Prescott doesn't make mistakes, got a tall receiver. I mean, that just sets up pretty well for him. I know a lot of people aren't targeting this Eagles defense because they've been scoring touchdowns, because they actually been pretty good as a whole. But that doesn't mean that in a division matchup, especially with an elite receiver coming back, I got to double check his price, but I remember it looking too cheap to me on DraftKings. Dez is 7,100, so he's quite below the likes of Julio Jones, 9,600, AJ Green, 8,800, etc. You're getting a pretty big discount there for a guy who's got a track record. I know everyone feels better with Tony Romo throwing to him, but pretty much erase Bryce Butler from the rotation and get Dez Bryant back in there. I think he should be fine. Did we miss anyone in terms of receivers this week?
I think if you're going to really pay down and go for that kind of like you talk about, like the one-off kind of ticket type guy, I think Tyler Lockett is a guy who eventually is going to have one of these games, one of these catches that we saw several times last year, right? I mean, he was one of the best vertical receivers last year in terms of efficiency. Hasn't obviously shown up this year in that sense. I think he's a guy, if you're going to spend up a little bit more to kind of pick up on what you were saying about Fitzgerald, I think on the outside even is where you can also exploit Carolina. They're starting those young corners. They don't have a quarterback grade in the top 47 on Pro Football Focus. Floyd is banged up, and Brown's been out snapping him even when he's active. So I think Brown's looking like he's more likely to play here. He's been practicing. So he's another guy I think that has that tournament profile. Plus, there have been times when he's been their leading receiver. So it's not even just like Lockett where you're waiting for that one home run. But, yeah, Lockett's at 3,900. It's just kind of a home run play. You're just playing him to see if he can hit one.
Yeah, there's two names that I left out that I think of it. Julian Edelman's one of them against this Buffalo team. You look back to last year. Not much difference in the secondary, and Edelman was targeted 19 times. He was kind of their move-the-chains type guy against their cornerbacks are generally considered pretty solid on the outside, but Edelman's kind of their sneaky guy to move inside, and he's basically uncoverable. So he caught 11 passes for, I think it was 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. I would guess that they would scheme the same way now that they've got Tom Brady back, so that's just a hunch. Obviously, he's always a cash game consideration, but I think here it's kind of tournaments too. And Stephon Diggs, if you're playing a slate that includes Monday night, I mean, we just saw what the Packers did to this Bears team. Everyone caught 10 passes. So their offensive coordinator.
Jordy Nelson, 8, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if they can do it with, 3 guys that caught 10 or almost caught 10 or something like that, that Stephon Diggs can certainly be schemed into a bunch of catches this week, especially with Jerick McKinnon looking questionable. If they don't have him, Asiata's kind of slow. The running game might not be able to develop. They may have to go to the air more often. And, we haven't seen wide receiver 1 Diggs since week 2? But I think there is a possibility we get wide receiver 1 Diggs again this week against the Bears.
I hear you.
Any final words on receivers this week?
No, I think the running backs, once you get some – I think I would focus on building my backfield first because there's so many nice options at receiver that, get confident with that backfield. And if you do pay down like I plan to, it's going to be nice because you're kind of shopping. It's kind of fun. You're shopping with house money there when you're looking at how attractive some of these matchups are, especially in that tier where it's not super, super expensive. It's below $8,000 at least. I mean, that's expensive, but I just think you can build up like a really nice lineup with some real heavy hitters here between Hilton and Marshall and some of the guys we've mentioned.
Yeah, and you mentioned spending down at tight end. I know you like Doyle. I like C.J. Fedorowicz, so that even opens up some more salary this week.
Even Gary Barnidge. Since week 3, Barnidge is Barnidge. I mean, he doesn't have the touchdowns, but he's on pace for like 1,100 yards and 80 catches since then.
Yeah, I agree with you. Barnidge is kind of weird where it depends on the quarterback that's throwing to him with how productive he is.
He does well so, yeah.
Yep, exactly. All right, before we leave, got to tell you again about RotoCurve's free trial for this NFL season. It's too good not to tell you about rotocurve.com/free trial. You get all the wonderful things included in the package, the rankings, projections, DFS tools. There's so many of them. Optimized lineups for DraftKings and FanDuel. You get the ownership percentages. So you might as well take advantage because it is free as free can be. I got a pumpkin spice latte for free delivered the other day, so I can tell you that free things are wonderful. By the way, that's a Postmates deal if you want to take advantage of that. But again, rotocurve.com/free trial. We love free things. We'll be right back. Jim with his pirate hat on currently. I don't know if you guys can see it, but we'll be right back with the stacks for this week to close out the videos.